G'day guys, how you going? 15-point win against the Saints at the MCG last night. Terrific performance. Terrific. I want to talk about trust because it's something that comes up a lot in my videos with this group. It has for a long time now. And the responses that you guys always sort of give post particularly with a loss or even after a good win, it's about trust. I think trust for us is more about professionalism and what professionalism looks like for a football team. And I'll go back to Thursday night's game against Fremantle and Collingwood at Optus Stadium. And I suppose the issues that Collingwood faced going across to Perth, resting some bloody really good experienced players. Imagine if we did exactly the same thing. Imagine if we rested Patrick Cripps, maybe a Sam Walsh. We decided not to play Harry. So we rested some significant players. Just imagine that for a second. Collingwood did that on Thursday night. Not only did they do that, they were coming up against a team that was desperate to respond after a poor performance against St Kilda the week before, and on the road as well. But I don't think any of us were surprised at what Collingwood did on Thursday night at all. In fact, it's become the norm for that football club. And I'm not here to blow smoke up Collingwood's ass at all. But I did read on social media a lot of Carlton supporters really praising Collingwood. Why can't we, as in Carlton, be like Collingwood? Now, we're never going to be like Collingwood in regards to the way we play. We just go about it in a different manner, which is okay. But I think it's more about professionalism and consistency. So on one hand, you got a situation where it wasn't a surprise at all that Collingwood went across there and did what they did. And it's more, let's not get caught too much into the way that they play, like the way that they play their game plan and their game style. Obviously, that is important. It's more about the belief and the attitude. And I don't think they went there for 1 minute over in Perth thinking that they weren't going to win that game of football. And it showed. It just showed. So on the one hand, with us, and we're saying, let's be like Collingwood. Well, this is about professionalism. You know, last night, in isolation, this was such a professional performance by our boys, just like it was against Geelong 2 weeks back. But it was almost like at the safety of the MCG, a ground which I think we play quite well at. It almost is become our spiritual home, the MCG. So I had no problems with trusting this group of ours that we would be able to respond in a really strong manner. And I mentioned that in my preview. I believed after that horrid, unprofessional performance against Adelaide, and it's not the first time we've gone into state and just not been prepared professionally for 4 quarters and just blown away. We've seen it so many times with this group. I knew we would respond. Coming back to Melbourne, the safety of the MCG, almost like everything in our favour, kissed on the dick a little bit. The fact that we got that game at the G, and I mentioned this in the preview. I knew we would respond, and we did. I thought we were magnificent in that first half. You know, we got out of the blocks. I know they kicked the first 2, but there was never any question in their mind that this group would respond. So in one respect, we can trust that we can do it when things are kind of in our favour. But next week, we've got to travel again. Just after the Geelong victory, which was so good, we then had to travel over to the Adelaide Oval against the Crows, who've had the wood on us for a long time, and we dished up that such a fucking insipid, unprofessional performance. And now we've got to go to the SCG against the Sydney Swans, who've done a number on us at that ground. I can't remember the last time we won at that ground. I can't remember. So this becomes... It just becomes another trust issue with this group. And are we getting there professionally, really? Because last night we were up for the fight for 4 quarters. Up for the fight for 4 quarters. And I can't sit here with any belief other than saying we should be now in a strong position to go across the SCG. Not necessarily win the game. Like, they're fucking hard to win. They're hard to win, but we can't afford now to go across there. And this is why this becomes so good. This is why it does. It becomes so good. We get to see us, like, 2 weeks after that horrible performance against Adelaide, we get to see what this team and what this group actually is once again. I kind of can't wait. I'm not necessarily worried about it, like, because it is what it is with this team. I actually don't trust. They're going to have to change that, but it's more for themselves. It's not necessarily for us as a supporter group. It's for themselves. So they can't afford to go across there and do what they did against Adelaide. Doesn't necessarily mean they have to get the 4 points. No, because it's such a difficult road trip. But if they bring the same application which they did last night and they did against Geelong on the road, which professional teams have to do. You have to do it. In order to be the better teams in this competition, you've got to travel, and you've got to travel strongly. And we just don't do it. For whatever reason, we don't do it. So there's always going to be a question mark on this group from a trust point of view. But in isolation, last night was terrific. And the thing that pleased me the most was when it got to halftime and we had those injuries, and I kind of reflected a little bit and thought, what are they going to do in the second half? What's going to happen in the second half? Because there could have been excuses made, and I didn't want to be in a situation of losing this game and kind of having to make excuses that we were down rotations on the bench, we lost players, we had to readjust, we ran out of legs. I wanted us actually to fucking fight this game out to the end. Like, absolutely fucking grit, determination, substance, as I love to call it, being really disciplined and strong behind the ball, and then just sort of take our moments. And we did that. And that's why this was such a pleasing performance for me. But that's where it's got to stop at the moment. Like, it's got to stop there for me. I can't, as much as I'm looking forward to next week, I'm just not trusting this group that they can go across there and just have that same application. And I know the opposition can sometimes take that away from you, and I don't think necessarily last night, as much as I think the Saints were plucky and they played with some great spirit, I didn't feel like they took a lot away from us last night. But that may be taking a little bit away from or discrediting our performance, because I did think defensively we were really strong, and the game was played on our terms, particularly behind the ball, the way we set up, which was really pleasing. And they never, as much as they wanted to crowd the stoppages and then try and flick the ball on the outside, it kind of played out into our favour. So it was a really good win, and it keeps us somewhat in the hunt. And I know I've been speaking about this 5 block of games before the bye, even after we lost the 4 in a row, and I knew we were playing the West Coast Eagles in North. games I weren't necessarily looking forward to. I spoke about this block and the fact that we needed to win at least 3 out of the 5. And no one can tell me that the clubs don't look at blocks of games and what they need to be able to do before the bye. I even heard Jacob Wiedering talk about this last night. They were thinking about Sydney and also the Giants game coming up as a block. And I've said we needed to win 3 out of 5. We've now beaten Geelong. We had that horrible loss against Adelaide, and we've beaten St Kilda, both at the G. Now, I don't want to look too far ahead because I'll preview the Sydney game in due course, but I can't see us beating Sydney, but I feel like we'll beat the Giants at home. I really do, which will be 3 out of 5. And I suppose, given the really poor start to the season from a win-loss point of view, it's probably a positive for us going into the mid-season bye. But fuck, we need to put in a good performance next week, like a good performance. Whether that's good enough to take the 4 points is probably, I don't know, like it's probably not the most important thing. The most important thing for me is that we go across there and fucking fight for our life and play a really strong brand of football. Because so many times with this group, it just hasn't been the case. And I think that's where the trust comes from. But last night, I spoke a lot about the inexperience of St Kilda and who were essentially the more seasoned team. And there's no doubt I think we're further advanced than the Saints. We should be anyway. That's probably debatable. I can't speak on behalf of St Kilda, but there's no doubt in my mind the experience probably won out in the end, but that might be taking away a little bit from the fact that we did have some significant contributors last night who were at the sort of early part of their career. And as much as Ross Lyons said in his press conference that it was a really good learning situation for the likes of Garcia and Boxall, who had the job on Sam Walsh, and the week before they did numbers on Sarong and I think it was Brayshaw from Fremantle and kept them out of the game, that they had their hands full last night, but they'll learn from that. I think that takes away a little bit from the fact that the adjustments we need to make after half-time, having those injuries, putting Lewis Young back, Chera had to go behind the ball, Cooper Lord got really big midfield minutes. There's some inexperience in the middle of the ground. We had Jackson Binns playing his 3rd or 4th game of senior football, and I thought he performed really strongly on his wing. We had Will White, hasn't yet played 10 games of senior football yet. So we did have a fair amount of inexperience as well. And I thought that group of players, although they didn't necessarily set the world on fire, I thought Binns had a pretty good game, but those other experienced players had really good moments, which were important. And I might just reference Will White for a second. I don't even think he had a great game, but you look at what these small forwards do, and I know we're really critical of our small forwards, and I didn't think they had great games last night. It's going to be interesting when I do the votes. I'm still kind of thinking about it, but I did watch Will White through that last quarter, and the amount of running they do, these small forwards and these high half forwards, the likes of Elijah Hollins. But there was a Will White situation. We're talking about a really inexperienced AFL footballer. And he made a really bad mistake late in the game where he dragged the ball in and got caught holding the ball. I think it was Philippou who kicked the goal. I think you know the situation. He was playing as a small forward at the time, but he worked really hard up the ground to help out defensively. And he, to his credit, Will White, he was in a perfect spot. He was filling in that hole. He worked really hard to get down there defensively to fill in that hole. The ball popped out to him from a St Kilda kick, and he was by himself. And with a little bit more experience, you would have hoped that he was able to take that ball cleanly and just have a little bit more composure with a bit more experience, because he'd actually worked fucking so strong. And I reckon when they look at that vision, they'll be saying to Will White, that's actually the perfect spot to be in defensively for your role. But the fact of the matter is, very inexperienced player, fumbled the ball, lost his feet, dragged it in, free kick again. So we talk about the St Kilda's inexperience, but we also had some players who were inexperienced as well. To see him then, Will White, respond with a couple of important moments late in the game, and Cooper Lord. Elijah Hollands missed an easy shot, Corey Durden missed an easy shot, and then Cooper Lord owned the moment. And before that goal he kicked from outside 50, he was the one, I think, who set the play up from the back half. So the work rate to work forward, and then such an important moment for a young player to be able to go back and kick that goal. On the one hand, you got Ross Lyon talking about the inexperience of St Kilda, but there you got it. You got a kid who's yet to play 10 games of AFL football. He's come on a Friday night on the big stage and gone bang, bang, and I'm not saying it iced the game at that stage, but the Saints were coming, and there was a kid just owning the moment for our football club, which I was just wrapped with, absolutely wrapped with. Okay, so I think defensively, we've spoken about our defence, and hats off to bloody whoever's in charge. I think it's Aaron Hamill is ever in charge of our defence at the moment. Geez, they were brilliant last night. They were absolutely brilliant. Every time St Kilda went forward, it almost felt like that we just had, whether it was Nick Haynes, Jack Silvani, Mitch McGovern early, which was, I think, a big loss. I think losing Mitch McGovern early was a big loss. Felt like he was on. It's one of those games, a bit like the Geelong game. It felt like he was on. But their ability to own the space and work off each other and just help Jacob Wiedering out. It used to be a bit of a one-man band in our back line. It was either Wiedering or no one else. We were crying out for I suppose, that second key defenders, those hybrid type sort of defenders to step up. And to see Haynes now playing that role so well, and also what Jack Silvani's been able to do is quite staggering, really. His composure, his ball use, just everything about the way he's playing the game. I mean, it's when you really think about it, I think individually it's the biggest positive to come out of 2025 so far. And to see him playing with one hand, he looked a little bit sore last night as well. So hopefully that's nothing too serious below their hips, because it looked like it'd been a corky. I hope it wasn't his knee, but their ability to assist Jacob Wiedering, because the opposition do put a lot of time and effort into Jacob Wiedering because they know how good he is, just makes us look a lot stronger behind the ball. And I don't think, even in the Adelaide loss last week, because they just fucking owned the clearances, owned the middle of the ground, and we were under the pump, I didn't think the defence was the poorest part of our game last week. So for the most part this year, defensively, we have been really strong. Really strong. I might just go through the players quickly. I've mentioned Jack Silvani, guys. Outstanding again. I thought he was one of our best. Cowan, off early. That's an interesting one. Wasn't it originally like a 4-week hamstring injury, and he came back really early? So I think question marks. I know when you win a game of football, the injuries somewhat get swept under the carpet a little bit. But that one, to me, looks like poor management. Poor management. To lose, I think, a player, like a quick player in our backline who would have been responsible for St Kilda's smalls, could have been disastrous. Motlop quiet. Had a couple of good moments late on the wing. Was able to find some space. Had a really quiet night. Excuse me. Apologies. Ollie Hollands battled away. Felt like late in the game he had some nice composure in the middle of the ground. Chera had to go behind the ball. Thought he started the game really strongly. had to go to half back. Cripps thought he was sensational. He's been owned by Jack Steele in the past. I thought it was a great battle. I didn't think Jack Steele was poor by any stretch of the imagination, but 10 tackles, really hard and tough on the inside, 26 disposals. Big H, that's 2 weeks out of 3 that he's just owned the game, really. Huge second half, ran his ass off, big goal late. Yeah, couldn't be happier for him, really. Like, you need your big blokes in those games to step up. And I think really if you look at the game, if you look at this game, it was like those big guys can sometimes, I mean, there was a lot of criticism of selection, of we went in too big, but Saints almost didn't have anything forward of the ball. Anyone who could clunk it, anyone who had the presence of Harry or even Charlie. They had Caminiti and Cooper Sharman, but they're not in the same class bracket as Harry and Charlie. I still think we're missing. Don't think our smalls are that great. Like, they might work hard defensively. I feel like that's still a weakness of our game. And I'd love to still have that hybrid, dangerous forward. And I know we've tried. I mean, Jack Martin in the past, he's now gone. Zach Williams, Brody Kemp. Would have been great to see Brody Kemp still in this team with those two, particularly when Harry goes into the ruck. It just gives you a little bit more structure forward of the ball. So I still think that's an area that we'd love to get another player that's good at ground level and good in the air, whether that's Nash Demoya, I'm not quite sure. Mitch McGovern, really disappointed to see him go off. I hope that's not too serious. A great battle between TDK and Rowan Marshall. Felt like at times in that game, guys, I don't know how you felt about that battle. It was like, fucking Marshall's got on top. He's killing TDK now. And then they were going, TDK's been pretty good. He's got it. So it was always to and fro. TDK started well. Marshall fight back into it. TDK, Marshall, TDK. And it almost like they cancelled themselves out. But he worked his ass off, 21 touches. Didn't necessarily use the ball that well, but had 36 hit-outs. Akers, really brave to come back on. I think it just should have shows you how much that body of his is just probably fucked up. And we have been critical of him. Make selection really interesting next week, whether you can take a player in with a bung shoulder over to the SCG. Very interesting. But to come back on and just give us some legs was pretty important. That first quarter and a half of Sam Walsh I was talking to my son about this during the game, that's the best we've seen him play for a long time. He drifted out of it for a little bit, came back into it. Low possessions, 21 for his standards, but kind of felt like it was high impact at certain times, particularly early in the game. Durden, very, very quiet, had opportunities to kick goals in the last quarter, which would have boosted his numbers up a little bit. Didn't think he was influential at all. Loved Elijah's game, particularly defensively. Would have loved to have seen him kick that goal, which he usually would have kicked. Wiedering, good. I mean, good. A little bit clumsy at times, airily. Dropped a few marks, missed a few spoils, but it's not about Jacob Wiedering anymore, is it? It's just not about him. And this is the most pleasing thing defensively. Binns kept his width really well. Am I sold on Jackson Binns? No. Am I happy for him? Yes. Deserved the opportunity. Looked really engaged in the game. Want to see a little bit more of him. Big game for him next week against the Sydney Swans over there. They've got strong wingers. Nick Haynes, sensational. Really good. Went off the ground. Was really worried about that neck. But he came back on and was a really strong contributor. Hewitt just continues to be a really solid performer. Charlie early was dynamite. Was clunking everything. Was far too good for Callum Wilkie. Should have probably got a lot more free kicks. Jeez, he's a scragger, isn't he? Callum Wilkie. As the game progressed, Wilkie held his own. But kind of like the damage had already been done in that first half. I think that buffer, when we were fit and fresh and we had our full quota of players kind of up until sort of midway through that second quarter, that buffer of 20 odd points was kind of significant. Once the game became really tight and congested after half time, it just became a bit of an arm wrestle. So that margin, it was almost catch up, the effort to catch up. Will White, mentioned him with a couple of poor moments, chimed in with an early goal. Yeah, I mean, he's developing. He's a long way off still, but provides something. Cooper Lord, as I mentioned, owning that moment late in the game, got some midfield minutes. Adam Sard, yeah, I mean, I think defensively he was okay. You know, he's okay. We're not getting the run and bounce from Ollie and Adam Sard. I think we're probably now changed the way we want to play defensively. We've become more of an intercept marking type of team. So we're generating our ball movement from our back half, which I don't mind, from the likes of Nick Haynes and Jack Silvani's, particularly Jack's kicking ability. So it's kind of taken away from Adam Sard the tendency that we need him to be exploding off halfback flank. That's my thoughts anyway on that. And Francis Evans, other than that sort of kick forward in the first quarter where it landed on the chest of Harry Mackay, he had a really quiet night. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts? How are you feeling after what was a really professional performance last night by our boys, just to keep us in the hunt? How are you feeling about that? And also, am I on the mark with the trust issue? You know, be like Collingwood, but let's be realistic here. It becomes about now what we do next week. Anyway, speak soon. Oh, forgot about Lewis Young. How could I forget about Lewis Young, the young and the restless? Couldn't be happier for him. I mean, good early, 2 goals as a forward. Did his job, create space for Charlie and Harry, and then went back, became rock solid in our back half as well. Super important player last night. Does Michael Voss get the credit? Regarding selection for that? Geez, he cops a bit, doesn't he, Vossi, in regards to selection, but that worked. He was a really strong performer last night. Big Lewis Young.